Hello everyone, welcome to the Luke Branquinho Show. Well, I'd like to welcome my next guest. This young lady has overcome so much in her life and is an inspiration not only to me, but millions of people out there. Amberley Snyder, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm excited that I finally got to be on here.
You know, from the first time I met you, I was inspired by you. I believe it was at the American. That was the first time I got to meet you, but then just watching you, through the years, not only competing, but telling your story and being a motivational speaker. You were injured in a vehicle accident and are paralyzed from the waist down, but to see how you've overcame everything, it should be a life lesson to so many people. I mean, you're doing what you want to do. You're running barrels, you're living your dream, and you don't let anything back you down.
I try not to. I feel like it's sometimes an uphill battle. I still get to compete and at the level I want to. Of course, there's room for improvement. I mean, I'm the only one that does what I do, so I better be good at it or gosh, I certainly wouldn't be able to place anywhere.
Amberley, your horses had such a huge impact on when you got injured to get back on them. Tell us about your horses and obviously the importance they were for you to get back in the saddle.
So the first horse I would tell you is Power, of course. That's the one that everybody knows. That's the horse that I think across the entire world, they know his name. I'm pretty sure there's a few people that if they could just meet Power, they honestly could care less to meet me. But I got him when I was in high school. He was a little bit of a problem child as far as it goes with his ADHD, but luckily the pattern's not any longer than what it is. He ended up being a really great horse, and of course he was the one that I got back on after my accident. You know, he's the horse that really gave me my freedom back, and honestly the opportunity to do at that point was impossible. You know, what I was asking to do, nobody had done before.
Right.
He was like kind of at the top of his game, I guess, in some ways for him, like that was where he was, and he didn't deserve to be outrun. So I let him retire and picked up the ones that I run now. We
actually were visiting with a pet psychic and talked about how much animals communicate with humans, and they don't, we don't know that they're doing that. They know, hey, there's something wrong here, we need to change this up. And do you feel like when you, got healed up enough to ride, Power was that way? He's like, okay, I need to kind of take care of her here and there?
So of course I was different, right? I was in a chair, my horses had seen me walking, and I didn't know how they were all going to react. My road horse would snort at me. He was never like scared of me, but he would always snort at me, and Power would always give me this look like, what are you doing? Like, what? Get out of that. Like, just stand up and get out of that. Like, that's the feeling I would get. And then I started running him, and I was so mad because after my accident, he didn't run as hard as what he did prior. And so it would make me so mad because I'm like, horse, I don't think you understand. Like, no one's giving us a shortcut here. If we don't freaking show up, like, that's not it. And so I finally I called the pet psychic because I'm like, I've got to figure out what is going on with this horse. So she tunes into him, right? And the first thing he says is, did I hurt her? And the lady's like, no, you didn't hurt her. And he said, what horse out here hurt her?
Wow.
And she was like, nobody hurt her. And, she showed him that it was a truck, that I was in a truck accident, so that he understood that it wasn't any horse out there. And he was funny already because he was 100% a buddy horse. He liked every other horse around him until I would get on his back. And then it could be his best friend and he would bite them. He'd behave like that. And that truly made sense to me. So I told her to tell him, you need to go faster. Like, I know there's more in there, so you need to go faster. And he said, that's not my job. My job is to take care of her. From that moment on, I mean, how do you blame him for that?
Right. Obviously, you got him talked back into going faster, though.
Thank goodness he did. I tell you what, I've never had a horse be so careful with me when it comes to bad ground or bad scenarios as him. And I probably never will.
Changing gears from getting hurt to the American to your horses, now Yellowstone, you're a movie star. Tell me something about it, because I've watched one season, and to see how it's taken over the Western world and it's helped expand and broaden the Western way of life, it's pretty cool.
You know what, that part has been really neat with that show. The barrel racing rap has been very interesting when it comes to Yellowstone. You wouldn't believe how many people have asked me at this point, because I was on the show, right? Like, are all the stories accurate with barrel racers? I'm like, no, that is not through and through the way that this works. But it was pretty dang neat. So I knew Jake Ream, so he provided the horses on the show. He was actually, Taylor Sheridan was a client of Jake Ream's, and that's how they got hooked up when the show came out with Taylor Sheridan. And Jake had told him about my story and had really just said if it ever fit in with the script, he should put it in. And fast forward to season 3, right? It fit. It was kind of interesting the way that it came about. Jake he'd sent me a warning. He just said, hey, I think that they've written you in the script, so just be aware. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But honestly, my schedule at that time in the fall was so crazy. I was going to be leaving the country for a month. I was going to Costa Rica for 2 weeks and then Colombia for 2 weeks for stem cell stuff. And so I was like, watch them get a hold of me and I'm not even in the freaking country.
Right.
And the way that it worked, I legit got an email from one of the producers and said, hey, we've written you in the script, so we really need you to show up. Okay, I'm like, well, what are the days we have as options? Because here's my schedule and I'm going to be in town, and they filmed in Utah for that scene. So I said, I'll be in Utah like these 3 days in the next month. And I'm a small fish, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Tell Kevin Costner, hey, Amberley Snyder can't show up to film her scene. We're going to need to move you around. It ended up working out. And honestly, my mom and my brother drove power onto the set, and I went straight from the airport to set. We filmed that day, and I went back to the airport the next morning.
Wow.
When I showed up on set and I looked at the script, and it originally wanted me to pull myself on. I knew it wasn't a one and done concept. And I said, how many times are you guys wanting me to do this? And they said, well, how many times do you think you can do it? I'm like, one. One time. How many times can you do a straight up deadlift from the ground up to a horse? And they were like, oh, I guess that's true. Probably not that many times. I'm like, no, one. My brother was there with me, so we ended up throwing him in the script, and he's the one that lifted me on all the times.
You're an inspiration to everybody out there. Trust me. I know you see it. I know you feel it. I know people tell you that, but it's emotional for me to see how much of an impact you have on everybody's life. So I'm proud of you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, have a safe trip. Thank you again for your time, Amberley.
Thank you.